let's just jump right in, all right? And there is a widespread interest in flat Earth, and I believe you get asked this by your students in science class at Masters University. And why has that become so popular?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't entirely know why it's become so popular. I think it's just one of those things that people enjoy having a sense of knowing things that other people don't know. It's kind of the secret kind of thing. And so that kind of conspiracy mentality can get really, really exciting for people. And when you get online and the way YouTube and things like that are set up, like as you start watching one kind of video, it keeps recommending the same kinds of videos for you, right? So you can quickly go down that Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole, They've
got their algorithms.
Yes. And so I think that kind of thing plays into it, yeah. But
would it concern you, a Christian who holds to a flat Earth, or should that just be a debatable matter, purely a difference of opinion, nothing serious there?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, especially because the evolutionary community, they'll say things like being a creationist is just like being a flat earther, right? And so I got to think, okay, is that true? Why is that not true? And we were actually talking about this in the car in our drive too. And what it really comes down to is that in flat Earth, you're denying objective reality. You're denying what you can see and what people have seen. And it ends up being a thing where you have to assume there's a lot of people lying, right? Pilots are lying. People who design satellites are lying. Government leaders are lying.
The windows outside the plane?
Yes, yeah. So like,
are those even lying?
And I personally know astronauts who are Christians and have been up into space. And so I'm like, I don't think this guy's lying, So I think that's where it concerns me, is more the discernment side of things. Like, do I have the ability to think through what's being presented? And unfortunately, sometimes people start saying, oh, the Bible supports this idea, right? And so I think there's some danger in how we do our hermeneutics and how we read the Bible, recognizing what are poetic statements versus what are statements that are, just literal historical statements, things like that. So when the Bible talks about sunrise and sunset, it's the same way we talk about it, right? We use those terms, even though we don't actually think that the sun is moving across the sky, literally, And so I think that there is some danger there. If someone believes in a flat earth, does that mean they're not saved? No, it's ridiculous. You can be a Christian and believe all kinds of things that are different. But I think for that particular one, I would just encourage someone who's thinking about that, make sure that you are using good discernment, good wisdom, the same way that you tackle the Word of God and consult help with it. You should also do something similar as you're looking at that issue.
What would be the top few most obvious, objective, this just has to be assumed?
Yeah. There's one from ancient times. People figured this out, right? That when you're watching the horizons, if you get to go to the beach and you get to watch ships go away from you, you'll see that they not only get smaller, which is perspective, right? They don't actually shrink. But you'll see the ship, it looks like it starts going into the water, right? You'll see the top part and it gets smaller, and it actually looks like it's sinking. And that's because you're watching it go around the curvature of the earth. And then of course, the whole idea of seasons and day and night have to do with the earth spinning. And so it's very difficult to imagine how you could have, when I call my wife, and it's nighttime for her and it's daytime for us, like what's going on there, right? It's because one part of the earth is facing the sun and one's not.
You just thought you could trust your wife.
Yeah, I feel like I can trust her. And one that I use in class a lot, because I teach a geology class, and so I talk about earthquakes. And I say, when, let's say an earthquake happens in New Zealand, right? As the earthquake waves move out, different places get hit at different times, right? You can feel it. Your little seismometer picks up on it, little scribble thingy. You've seen these before. And when an earthquake happens in New Zealand, it gets felt here in South Africa, read by those things, when it's being read over in North America, right? And so you think, well, how is that possible? Well, it's because they're moving out around the world, right? And if it's flat, it should be like it hits an edge. And it should be that, let's say, I don't even know where you draw the lines. What, does the Pacific Ocean not exist, or the Atlantic? I don't know how it works with flat Earth. But you've got to draw a line somewhere, right, where the Earth stops. And yet, any direction, east or west, you get earthquakes. You can feel them on the detectors. And so that only works if the world is actually round.
So how do we know the difference between a real conspiracy and a a false conspiracy?
So I'm assuming you mean real conspiracy in the sense that, because there's two ways you could understand that, right? Like an actual conspiracy, like Watergate, or do we mean like, a conspiracy, a real conspiracy theory versus a fake conspiracy theory?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say one of the things always deals with, how many people have to be lying for this to work, right? So that's actually one of the arguments that's used in favor of Christianity, right? Is if Christianity were false, then these 12 guys had to be lying about all the miracles Jesus did and that he rose from the dead, right? And yet most of them went out and got martyred and died for their beliefs. And then all the other people who lived in that area had to also be lying. And you've got this whole list of people who had to be lying for Christianity to be false, right? Along the same lines, if you're, and so I would say, obviously that's a true story. The conspiracy theory would be that Christianity was made up, that Jesus actually didn't raise from the dead. Along the same lines, you think about flat earth, as we talked about, all the people who would have to be either confused or lying for this to work, all the technologies that you use every day, when you do your maps on your phone, that's satellites going above us, right? That are telling us where to go. You'd have to believe that somehow all of that is fake. That's where you're getting into really weird territory, right? Where you're basically saying, like, I don't trust tons and tons and tons of people out there.
Who do you trust?
Right, exactly. And that's where I think it gets really dangerous, and we shouldn't be people who are characterized by mistrust, right? That's not who we should be as Christians. And we talk about this. I mentioned some evolutionists will say, well, creation is just flat earth. There are some people, I think, that are in both camps. But in general, we're not creationists because we think all the people are hiding information from us. We have the same facts that they have. We have the same fossils, same rocks. We just differ in the interpretation of things we can't see anymore, right? We're not debating whether or not the earth you can actually look at and study right now is round. We're saying, hey, something a long time ago that no one has seen, what do we think about it? And so that's why that's very different than a conspiracy theory.
Excellent. That's helpful.